work is changing. And I love that you chose a path for yourself. You built a work environment and a work style and a methodology that worked for you.
Welcome to Design Nerds Anonymous, the podcast that sparks curiosity at the intersection of business and design. I'm your host, Amanda Schneider. Well, usually I'm your host, but today you'll see. I've spent the last several years researching the future of work. Thousands of hours of interviews, thousands of data points, and eventually all of that became my new book, Work for What's Next. But here's something that may surprise you. I'd say that the conversations after the book has launched have been even more interesting than writing it. And that's why we're taking these conversations on the road and recording them for you right here on the DNA feed. Because the future of work isn't shaped in isolation. It's shaped when we're willing to come together, ask better questions, challenge one another's assumptions, and learn from different perspectives. Our first stop was the Mannington Commercial showroom in Denver, where we decided to do something that pushed me a little outside of my comfort zone. We turned the microphone around. Our longtime sponsor turned personal friend, Cindy Kaufman, interviewed me about not just the stories behind the book, but the stories behind me as the author. And I'll admit, it's a lot more comfortable asking the questions than answering them. But I'm glad we captured this conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Here's my conversation with Cindy, or rather, Cindy's conversation with me.
Good afternoon, Denver and other Coloradoans. Is that how I say that? I don't know. I'm from Atlanta. We're ATLians. It's so great to see you all. I'm so thrilled that we have such a wonderful turnout. This is just absolutely amazing. I'm Vice President of Marketing for Mannington. I've been on board about 3 years, and we've had such a great partnership with Amanda and Olga and everybody at Think Lab. When this book came out, it was just very exciting. It was like, oh my God, we've got a lot to talk about here. So obviously, everybody knows Amanda Schneider. She's the reason you're all here. But I want to tell a little story about why we're sitting here right now. Amanda was kind and generous enough to quote me in her book. Just such a great interviewer. She's so insightful. She's very curious. Why don't we interview Amanda? Why don't we find out what makes her tick and why she does all the amazing things that she does and sort of how that all happened? So that's accurate.
So the first thing that you're going to notice is that I'm a total control freak, and this is totally out of my comfort zone. So there's only one person I would trust to do this, and that is Cindy. So thank you so much for joining us here.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. So anyway, really the intent of this conversation is I wanted to know more about Amanda. I wanted to hear the story behind the story. She's obviously puts herself out there on the podcast in this amazing book. If you haven't read it yet, I know you all will. You're going to get a lot of great information out of this. But I'm just so curious about what drives Amanda and what makes her tick. So I always want to know, what was your family like? And not just your family, but your place in the family. Because every family, everybody plays a role. So I want to hear about your family. And I want to hear about your birth order. Tell me about who you knew you were based on growing up in your family.
Okay, where does one start with a question like this? Let's see. So I am one of two girls. I am the baby of the family, but ironically, I have a lot of the characteristics of the older.
I was going to say, does not track at all.
Yeah, probably does not track. My sister and I could not be more opposite. She is a computer programmer. She has long red hair down past her rear. She's about 5'3". I am 5'7". I do not program computers. So we have very different communication styles, very different lives, but we were raised in a very, very girl power family. I would say that's a big core piece.
I love that too.
Yeah.
I just love that.
It's a core piece of who we are. My mom is literally like that children's book, The Giving Tree. Just gives and gives and gives. And my dad, I'll tell a quick story about my dad. My dad always wanted to make sure me and my sister always felt like enough, exactly as we are. Every Valentine's Day, we would have a card on our nightstand when we woke up that usually was around the time of year he got his bonus, so he would have a little bit of money in there. There would be a single rose, usually a red rose, just to say I love you, and always a message that said, you are enough exactly how you are. I found out later that was because a coworker of his, he was an engineer, and a coworker of his had a son who was very popular in our little tiny Illinois town. And he said, I have these young girls calling my house, and it's like they're like desperate to speak to my son. And so that traumatized my dad, who was like, I'm going to make sure these girls know that they're enough without a man. And now later in life, my whole family laughs at this. My sister's married now. Her husband moved here from London and did not have a job at one point in time. My husband was going back to school on the Illinois Veterans Grant. So it was a moment in time. But so we were both supporting our husbands. And my dad was like, well, that's not exactly what I meant.
Right. Taking it a step too far. But I love that. Like, that's a really important message for everyone, but certainly for young girls. What was little Amanda like?
Little Amanda was like a goody two-shoes. I was a rule follower until high school, and I met our foreign exchange student, Ingrid, corrupted little Amanda.
Where was Ingrid from?
Yes, she was from Spain.
Ingrid from Spain.
Ooh. Y pasé un verano en España. I don't know if you know, I speak fluent Spanish from this exchange student.
Wow.
She introduced me to alcohol, and fun Amanda came out.
How old was you?
I was 16. Don't tell my parents.
Okay.
We can't let them listen to this podcast now. But yeah, so I was 16.
They would forgive you
and
at this point.
Fun Amanda came out, and bold Amanda came out, and I think she hasn't gone back in ever since.
I mean, we all have very different experiences growing up, and you grow up with a dad, especially a male figure that reinforces that belief, who tells you that you're enough, and you are a goody two-shoes, but then you sort of like find something else about yourself at that point. That's very, very interesting. Did that change your relationship at all with your family? Or, I mean, I guess you didn't want your parents to listen to this episode. Maybe they don't know. But
yeah, after this podcast, it might. Yeah.
But nothing shifted after Ingrid got a hold of you? And
I mean, I feel like every 17-year-old, which is funny because I have a 17-year-old now, like your parents get real dumb for a while. And so, we definitely went through that phase, which my sister never did. So they thought I was like the most rebellious child ever. But we definitely came back around. Now my parents live 1 mile away from me. And the flip side of this story is after raising a girl power dad, I now have 3 boys.
That was going to be my next question.
I thought that might be.
She's jumping ahead because she's a control freak.
Can't help myself.
You knew it was going to happen.
But after being raised in a girl power house, where you can say things like girls rule, boys rule. Now I'm raising 3 little boys. Like, we can't say those things in my house. And I have to help them navigate this world they're in.
Okay, I want to dig in a little bit on that because I have no children, full disclosure. If you can't say to your boys that girls rule, like, what are you teaching them about girls?
It's important, I feel like Gen Z, this book is all about Gen Z. We're talking about Gen Z. Gen Z is the most culturally and racially diverse generation. To Gen Z, even gender is a little bit more fluid than it was. And I happen to believe,
I would say, yeah.
I happen to believe that a reason is that people are bucking. Some of it is absolutely just is what it is. It's how you're born. So I don't want to minimize any of that. But some of it is also people just bucking these gender stereotypes. Like, why do we put little girls in pink? My boys wear pink. I'm very proud to say that my boys wear pink.
That.
Nobody wants to be put in a corner. Nobody wants to be told exactly how they're supposed to act and feel and what they can and can't do. My dad raised me. He brought me into these rooms very, very early on professionally that I had no business being in. He took me with him to Toastmasters, which, if anybody's familiar with that, it's a speaking club. So I would be
Anyone
in there
shocked by this
as
news?
as a 9th grader with his coworkers, where I was, learning to speak and things like that. So some of it was just exposure. So I feel like, we're not going to say things like girls rule, boys rule. We're not going to separate these things. It's about respect for everyone and really trying to help them see
that makes sense. That's what I think I was trying to look for, but I appreciate that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's, again, I feel like there's such a strange way between the way girls are raised and boys are raised. And again, not having any children of my own, but I see it in my nieces and nephews and friends' children. And I love what you just said. We're all enough. We all rule.
We all rule. But also, let's look at some of these stereotypes that we may naturally be blind to because of our position in life. And so one thing, I tell my boys a lot of things that I see on the road. I'll use as an example. When I'm on the road, like I am now for this book tour, I get questions like, oh, who takes care of your kids when you're on the road? Guess what? My husband travels for work. How often has he been asked these questions? Not once. So I want my boys to be aware of these things. That is not a girls rule, boys rule, like kind of a message, but just be aware, like these aren't probably things that you should say. They're probably these unintentional stereotypes that we all hold.
Yeah, they're biases. And they're societal, right? Like we're just all sort of ingrained. So I love hearing that you are teaching them that we are all enough. I'm going to jump to another topic, but I think there's really something connected here. Has anybody ever done their Enneagram here? Does anybody know what they're... Hey, we have some Enneagram fans.
What numbers? Oh, we got all 8s.
Oh.
They raised their hands.
Exactly.
Another 8 over there. Yeah.
Okay, if you haven't done your Enneagram, you need to do it. I actually don't even have a really good explanation of, like, it's just a personality test, but it focuses in on these sort of, like, major characteristics of, like, what drives you and motivates you and how you show up in the world. So Amanda is an Enneagram 8. I'm a 7, if anybody cares, but let me read to you some words I wrote down because I think this is interesting, especially if you're not familiar. So Enneagram 8s are energetic, strong, driven, courageous. I sort of made a parentheses around all these, and I wrote entrepreneurial because that
shoe fits.
Yeah. Generous and warm and have a very clear vision. But then there's,
shadow side.
Right. Every personality, all of us have our light side and our dark side. And I'm curious, like, how does this show up for you? And specifically tying it back to your boys and your family, how does that show up for you? Because I also think of the word perseverance when I think about you. What are you teaching them, and how are you exhibiting that day to day as you're raising 3 teenage boys?
Yeah, I feel like what I love about the Enneagram is it helps you with self-awareness. And I think that that's one thing in particular that my fellow 8s know that maybe we struggle with a little bit more. Enneagram is really a way to better understand kind of how you naturally operate and how you naturally see the world. And I think Enneagram 8s, especially I'll speak for myself, we can be so bold and so entrepreneurial and so unaware of how forcefully we come across that it has affected me personally. It has affected my relationship with my boys and how I speak to them, especially one of mine is a sweet little 9. If anyone knows, our 9s are the peacemaker. Like, it explains why he absolutely gets crushed when I yell at him. It changes the way that you interact, and you have to try it. It helps you be more empathetic to see yourself through others' eyes. And so all of these things are so natural to me. They're as natural as the air I breathe. I don't even realize that I am all of those words that you just read half the time, or at least not before I took the Enneagram. So it's helping me soften my approach with my boys, helping me soften my approach at work in how I speak. I think it's really helped develop my interpersonal skills.
Yeah.
But I also want to keep some of those things that make an 8 an 8. Like, I wouldn't have been able to write this book. Like, if you hear some of the stories of perseverance, I'm sure you're going to ask me about some of these things and how this has come about. If I wasn't an 8, I don't think I'd be sitting here right now.
I think that's probably right. And I wrote those words specifically because they resonated with me as I think about you. I did a little research on an 8, and there was a lot of other words, but these were the ones that jumped out at me.
I'm so proud to introduce Mannington Commercial and Cindy Coffin as a Season 10 sponsor of Design Nerds Anonymous. Mannington and Cindy herself have been alongside me, not only in the research, but also in the writing of this book.
Mannington Commercial has been a longtime sponsor of DNA. And one of the reasons I'm so proud of that is because DNA is the voice of our industry.
I'm so thrilled that you've been a partner for so long on DNA. What are the changes that you think people are struggling to solve?
It's a tough time to be a designer because you're dealing with a lot of information, but the responsibility lies on the shoulders of our industry for a great deal of what our future as a civilization looks like.
What is Mannington Commercial doing to really address some of these challenges?
We are committed to being fully transparent with everything that we do and the way that we do it. So that transparency really supports designers having access to all of the information that they need to make the right decisions clearly and plainly and transparently as possible.
If you could invite our podcast listeners, what would you say to them?
I think human beings are the differentiator. So I invite you to connect with a Mannington Commercial rep to learn more, not just about our new products, but how we think and how we show up for you as your design partner.
So, like, one of the things that I think about you is that you have this, like, captain energy. Does that make sense? Does that resonate?
Not boss bitch? You're not going to
Okay. Boss bitch, captain energy. talk about actually how Think Lab began.
Absolutely. So if you haven't listened to my TED Talk, I would invite you to watch that. There's a QR code in the book. But it really talks about how in a dual working family, like I knew I wanted to be a mom. I knew I wanted to work. I really, really love what I do. And we hit a point where it felt like a binary decision. Do you want to be a stay-at-home mom? Or do you want to be a working mom and really have to work in this world that didn't feel built for me, right? Because you have to work the hours that my kids are in daycare, right? You're waking them up to get them out the door, to get them to daycare, then you're bringing them home and putting them to bed, right? Like, who made these rules that we're literally away from our kids, the very hours that they're awake? Well, those rules were made when women were working less, right? When you had to be physically in a place between 9 to 5 because there was assembly lines, right? They're old rules. And so I found myself really frustrated. And I will say that my husband and I have been through some struggles with this because he didn't hold the same guilt that I felt. That's not his fault. It's just society and the way.
I think that's accurate. I mean, I think that that's natural for how we've all been raised in, dare I say, a patriarchal society, is that men don't think about those things. To your earlier point about who looks after your children, no one's ever asked a man that.
And for me, I had to say, okay, what can I do about this? What is within my control? So I like to say I didn't see the options that I wanted. I didn't like the binary choice, so I built one. And honestly, when I started this company, it was right after I left Izzy, a little furniture brand, so grew up in this industry. I thought I was flushing my career down the toilet. I really thought it was over. I drove back to a little trade show called NeoCon with a 2-month-old in tow and worked that show like nobody's business, supported by my mom, the Giving Tree, who would take care of the baby so I could not look like I was there with the baby while I was trying to drum up business. I ended up getting 2 clients that first year, 2 turned into 3 turned into 4 the next year. We moved back to Chicago, and I had a third baby in there somewhere. But we moved back to Chicago, and business took off. I had 14 clients that year. So I started recruiting other working moms that had left the industry because they also felt like they had this binary choice. You can work in this world that wasn't created for you, or you can be a stay-at-home mom, which I'm not cut out to be. Let me save you from that. I only made it 5 months. But they joined me. So we successfully actually doubled our revenue year over year, 100% by word of mouth, until in 2018, the company was acquired by Sandow. Sandow is the parent company to Interior Design Magazine, Metropolis Magazine,
Material
all
Bank,
of
all
these.
those.
So I feel like, in a way, it was kind of this full circle moment in a story to show that what we needed as working moms actually ended up, we hired a 40-year-old who just wanted to spend her summers on a dude ranch. Like, no problem, you can do that. We hired a veteran who was, right? Maybe that's your next. We hired a veteran who was having some challenges at the time and needed a little bit more flexible work. What started as flexibility for moms really extended to a lot of folks. And
it's fascinating though, because speaking of full circles, like when you read this book, and obviously the title of the book, Work for What's Next, and we've had some conversations around this and how work is changing. And I love that what you did is, through your perseverance, through your Enneagram 8, through your girl power dad and your knowing that you were enough, you chose a path for yourself anyway. And you built a work environment and a work style and a methodology that worked for you. And I think where we're all struggling, whether we're male or female, is that work does feel like it's not working. Not the work that you're doing, but the environment or the structure under which you are doing it. And to study it in sort of in this generational lens, and Gen Z is this young generation that's coming in, but you already sort of paved this path in a way.
in experience.
Yeah. So you've talked a little about your family support and like how you were raised and that sort of foundation. But I know that you also have a support system right now in your life that you refer to as your elephant circle. Will you talk about your elephant circle for the group?
I will.
Yeah.
I will. So it comes from, there's an article, you can Google it, called Lessons Learned from Lady Elephants. I'm going to see if I can get through this without crying, because every time I try to tell this story, okay, we didn't mean for this to be that dramatic. But it talks about the women elephants and how they inherently form their little herds. When one of them is stressed, they give off a pheromone that predators can smell. So the other women, they gather around her, trunks out, and they kick up dust, right? To mask those smells so that no one can smell it, right? And likewise, when there's something to celebrate, elephant woman gives birth, they do the same. They surround her, trunks out, they raise their trunks, and there's pictures of this. You can Google it. It's so pretty. And they trumpet in celebration. And there's a line in there that says, girls, this is who we are, and it's who we're meant to be for one another. Sometimes we're the ones in the middle. Sometimes they're the ones fiercely kicking up dust in love. And I love this poem. I have been
It makes
so.
me want to cry
I know,
now.
right? I told you I can't get through this without, it's the words of the poem. So look it up. It's really, really beautiful. But I have had just an elephant circle of women, starting with my mom, the giving tree, to, my best friend from college, to her best friend post-college. And we have just collected these women. About half of them are named Megan, no joke. But we've collected these women and surrounded ourselves with these women that, whether it's celebrating a baby and a great moment that we're having, or whether it's celebrating just a really shit moment, they're there.
We're going to talk about shit moments because, sorry.
Can't wait.
We're just going to keep going deeper. I'm kind of an open book. I have a therapist. I go to therapy. My therapist has always taught me that we learn through contrast. And the other thing that we all know is that we grow through crisis. You don't grow as a human if your whole life is, green lights and rainbows and unicorns. Difficulties make us grow, and they teach us who we are. So would you be willing to be vulnerable and talk about a difficult moment or a challenging time in your life that taught you something, a life lesson, changed something about your life?
Absolutely. So what I will say is an important lesson that I learned actually with the launch of this book is, for every empty well, you're going to find one that's overflowing. And an empty well moment for me was actually when I left my professional job. I was moving cross country, and I was
Were you married or alone?
I was married and out to here pregnant. I'm not a good pregnant person. I was massive pregnant with my second son, and I thought that the company that I was working for at the time was going to work with me. I thought I was teacher's pet. The founder of the company, he just loved me, and I thought it was going to be magical. My husband's job was moving us to Atlanta. I would move to Atlanta and still keep working for the company. And the words that he said to me were, Amanda, we don't have a job for you in Atlanta, but we'll hire you as a consultant. Those 9 words were the most crushing words to me at that moment, because I loved my job. I loved what I was doing. It took me a really, really long time to hear the second half of that sentence, but I'll hire you as a consultant. What that forced me to do was go out on my own, which in the end has been an overflowing well.
100%.
It's been one of the best decisions that I've ever made. And so I think that it's really influenced a lot of chapter 3 in the book. So there is a whole chapter in the book, if anybody is feeling burnt out and you're feeling stuck and you're feeling like maybe you have a binary choice that might look different than my binary choice, then you don't like either of these choices. What that moment forced me to do is say, what is within my control? Like, what do I really want? And I think as I did that, I built it. I literally built it, and sometimes for me, I'm finding that it's harder to figure out what you want than to go get it.
It is really hard for people to decide what they want. That is a difficult position in life, and it's also a gift. But if you ask anyone what they want, what do you want to do, what do you want to be, most people don't have an answer for that. And getting to know yourself, and especially through crisis, is, I think, when a lot of those things bubble up. So,
and make us stronger in the end.
100%, yeah.
And we have a whole chapter to help you do that in the book.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you feed yourself? How do you recharge? A lot of what we talk about, a lot of what is written in the book, a lot of conversations in our industry right now are, I don't want to say they're negative, but we're in a time of transition. But you're also a busy woman. You are on the go. Amanda is not going to be at home for a solid week from now to November. I don't think I am either, but not for that reason. How do you recharge yourself? How do you feed yourself? How do you refill your well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is I'm still learning. Because I am a go, 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 go. Like, I switch to decaf like every other year because I'm like, okay, we need to tone this down, Amanda. It's like a little bit too much. And I hit a point around 2023 where my body crashed, where I couldn't optimize me to get any more out of me. And that was a me thing that I had to kind of figure out. And so in the last few years, I've had to figure out like, okay, Amanda, we really do need to sleep. What fuels me, what fills me up is obviously my elephant circle and being around people, but also like interesting podcasts, like week. If you're on my text list, I see some people in the audience that are on the receiving end of this. I'm up at 4 or 5 in the morning, like going for runs on the trail run and sending people podcasts. I almost sent you one this morning. Information feeds me, so I'm kind of a constant stream of this, and it's my love language too. So if you find an interesting podcast, send it my way, and I love to hear this. I am a multitasker, so a soccer game, I can watch my kid play soccer, but if you've ever watched 5-year-old soccer, it can get a little boring. So I tell myself it's okay to have a little earbud in and be listening to a podcast while your kid's playing. And so I fill moments with things that fill my bucket. And I think that multitasking has really helped. But in recent years, figuring out how to slow it the hell down, that's a learned skill that I have not mastered.
Hello, this is Cindy Kaufman. I am the Vice President of Marketing and Design Solutions for Mannington Commercial. Mannington Commercial is a proud sponsor of this season of Design Nerds Anonymous. And as someone who's had the privilege of reading Work for What's Next early on and even being quoted in it, I can tell you the shifts Amanda writes about are real. B2B selling has changed. Our clients are more informed, but decision-making is more complex, timelines are tighter, and loyalty is earned. At Mannington Commercial, we take that seriously. We've invested in equipping our teams differently, not just with product knowledge, but with context, with better digital tools, with a deeper understanding of the pressures our design partners are navigating every single day. Because beautiful flooring isn't enough. How we show up matters just as much. We believe the future of our industry belongs to brands that listen harder, prepare better, and make our partners' jobs easier. If you haven't connected with a Mannington rep recently, I'd like to invite you to, not just to see what's new, but to experience how we're thinking about what's next.
Do you have any guilty pleasures?
Oh my God.
Tell me a guilty pleasure.
Totally. So
Seriously, I want to know.
I love reality TV.
Oh my God.
Love is Blind. I just finished Married at First Sight. Anybody watch that latest season? A good friend got me onto Traitors, which is the most ridiculous show if you've not ever seen it.
Ridiculous.
So yeah, kind of the more ridiculous, the better. And that is if I'm stuck in an airport and sad that I'm not getting home to my family, my little reward is going to be watching some shit TV.
I needed to know that. I needed to know that you also had this other side that was like, I also watch reality TV. So let's turn to the book a little bit. Obviously, you've done your TED Talk. How many episodes of your podcast have been recorded?
Next week, the 100th episode will be launching.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
This will be 101, everyone.
That's a hell of an accomplishment. In addition to 101 episodes of podcast, a TED Talk, a book, like in all this research and everything that you learn and all the people that you talk to on a weekly basis, like what surprised you or what continues to surprise you the most as you do your work?
Yeah, I will say something that maybe bothers me. Let me start there.
Go there.
I think that's a good one. So when we present complex research, we often record it. It's part of this digital thing that you'll learn about in the book of really trying to use our synchronous time, the time that we have together really, really well. We'll record a research summary and send it to you. That's kind of a, let's say, 20-minute video being like, hey, you've got the whole 90-page report, but here's the 5 things we found most interesting. You should totally listen to this video, orient yourself to the full deck. We'll send it to you with this email, and then come to ask us questions, right? And it's our way of optimizing instead of throwing up information on them in our Q&A. It's the way that they can kind of come thoughtful questions and use our time most wisely. When we kick off those sessions, the number one thing we start with is we ask, what is one thing that either confirms something you already believe to be true or one thing that surprised you? 90% of the time, people choose something that they confirmed already to be true. And this has to be something like about psychology or something like that.
Confirmation bias.
When we look for information today, we're reading new books. I'm invited to all these speaking engagements. People are inviting me to tell them something they don't know. And what are they going to look for? They're going to learn something that they already knew. They're going to, right? So I will say that continues to surprise me because I love to hear that 10% that is like, I didn't know that before, and now I think differently because of it. It's Adam Grant's Think Again.
Yes.
We are not programmed to think that way.
We're not. And what's interesting is a lot of people think that research is meant to prove your hypothesis, but research is meant to disprove your hypothesis.
And guess what people do when you disprove their hypothesis?
They don't believe it.
They don't believe it. Well, let's talk about the methodology, Amanda. Like, how did you do that? Yeah.
But I feel like I learned that recently. Like, I have a niece who's in med school, and she does a lot of research. And she's like, the whole point of research is to test and test and test and test until you have proven yourself wrong. And then what keeps you up at night as you were writing or as you're, planning more podcast episodes? Like, what are things that you feel like you want to help solve, or how you can continue to push out new information?
Well, my first thought when you asked that question is I have a 17-year-old, which is terrifying. I'm not qualified for this level of parenting in a video game. But when it comes to the book, I think with AI and the pace of change today, it can easily feel like our world is swimming in a sea of unsolvable problems, right? And that is not motivating to anyone. If you look at a lot of the data, if you saw our little experiment we did at NeoCon with the would you rather questions, you'll see this really intense pessimism coming from Gen Z. And I think it's because they are exposed to so much more than even the rest of us were at their age. Same age, we had similar challenges, but they're exposed to so much more. And I think this pessimism is coming from feeling like they're swimming in a sea of unsolvable problems, feeling like they have to make big decisions at 17 that are going to follow them the rest of their lives, and it's paralyzing for them. I think if there's one thing that I hope this book does is spur some of those conversations that feels like there's something in our control, something that we can do about it, something that we can change.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Before we started, I asked you a question. I said, what do you hope I ask you? You said to me, you hope I ask, why does this matter to you?
For me, it feels like just everything is coming together, from the struggles that I talked about of leaving my job and how it felt like it was truly the end. And I thought everything was over and I was flushing my career down the toilet. My struggles as a working mom, I ended up figuring out I wasn't alone. Our struggles now as an industry, we're finding out we're not alone. And it's really part of a broader world problem that, guess what, our industry has been thinking about for a long time. So I think what's so exciting for me is it kind of feels like some of my personal struggles that I had were worth it. And I think it's just a really fun moment for our industry as well to kind of see, people think interior designers, right? Like decorators, pillow pickers, whatever, people don't realize the depth and breadth of this underground industry. And I think that at this moment, we've had viral articles in Forbes. We've had viral articles in MIT Sloan. The TEDx talk was pulled to TED, has 500,000 views. Now this book is going out. You'll hear shortly by the end of August, there's a very big podcast that will be coming out that I will be on. And whoever you're thinking right now is probably right, and none of that is because I suddenly became a better writer. I think it's because the world has suddenly started caring about a lot of the things that this industry has been talking about for a long time. So I love that my personal journey has come to a head right as our industry has kind of some of the struggles that we've had as an industry, some of those pain things are now turning into productivity, not productivity and get shit done, but productivity and it was worth it, y'all. Yeah. It was worth it. And I hope that this book and some of the messages and some of what we're trying to drive really gives our industry a stage to have a louder voice in making change for the world for the better.
That's fantastic. Thank you. What do people get wrong about you?
So I think my 8-ness can somehow sometimes come across as confidence, boldness, assuredness that isn't always there.
Not imposter syndrome.
I mean, who has imposter syndrome? But I think that even in my struggles with my 17-year-old, I was having a very serious discussion with him the other day, and he was like, "Mom, you're using your podcast voice." I was like, "Oh, geez." So sometimes all of this polish that now is almost inherent in me and who I am, when I get very emotional, I pull it together, and apparently my podcast voice comes out, and I'm very unsure of myself at this stage of parenting. Professionally, bring it on.
Yeah.
But there's areas that we're doing well, and there's areas that we're struggling, and so I think that that's something that maybe people get wrong, is that even when I'm not confident, I sound confident. And so maybe that benefits me in other ways. I'm not sure.
I mean, what you're saying to me is that you're just as vulnerable as every other human on the planet.
For sure.
And it's a good reminder.
I put my pants on the same way.
Everybody does. So what's your next act? What's next, other than the podcast, and like where are you going from here?
So I am a control freak and I am a planner.
She may have mentioned that once.
I may have mentioned that once or twice. And I think that the beauty of this moment that I'm in right now is I don't know. It's learning to be in the uncertainty, as we all are, and being just really open to what the universe has for me, right? Like, we're looking for our next topics that we're going to research on behalf of the industry. You all are in this room. You're now connected to me. You know I'm an avid LinkedIner. You know I love podcasts. Like, what can we be doing? We would love to know what we can be researching on the world, how we can use the platform that is inherently happening because of all of the empty wells and pain moments that are now kind of coming together. Like, how do we use this platform for good and to make change for the better? Like, I think I'm just really open to, especially these next however many weeks till November 14th and all of these world travels, like, what is the world going to bring to us and what does that look like? Because when I look at my path, I could never, that moment of the emptiest well, the moment of those 9 words that felt like the lowest low, I could never have planned all of this.
No.
It's come from my Enneagram 8-ness of every little opportunity and every little decision of being like a dog on a bone. And so I think that I'm learning to be comfortable in the, it's going to come to me and we're going to know it when we see it.
I think that's beautiful. When we are all young, we think we have to have it all figured out. And hopefully, as you all age gracefully and become mature and all of those things, as you learn your way, what you learn is that not knowing is really the beauty. It's so hard to be in that space, and it's so uncomfortable, and people, I think, struggle with discomfort. But the more you can be open in that space of not knowingness is what brings what's next. So I love that that's your answer. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening today. And thanks to Cindy and the Mannington team for giving me the idea and the space to share with all of you a little bit different side of this journey that I don't often talk about. One of the things that I mentioned during this conversation is how often we use data and information to confirm what we already believe to be true. But what if we used it to challenge ourselves instead? Well, that's exactly where we're headed next. Our next stop is in Chicago at the Momentum Showroom, where I'm joined by Cheryl Durst, CEO of the International Interior Design Association, Libby Gillen of the Women of Color in Design Group, and Lisa Chung of Gensler. Together, we explore what it takes to understand experiences we haven't lived ourselves, and why one of the most important leadership skills for what's next may just be the willingness to seek out perspectives different from our own. I hope you'll continue following along as the roadshow continues. And if you'd like to see if we're coming to your city, please follow me, Amanda Schneider, on LinkedIn to see where we're headed next. You'll find a full schedule pinned to the top of my LinkedIn profile. All right, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the road. Special thanks to the Surround Podcast production team, Rob Schulte and Rachel Senator.